Today we are going to discuss the behavioral finance. This is mainly we are going to discuss different type of attitudes of the finance investors. We will start our discussion with traditional finance. Traditional finance tells us the psychological patterns of an investor, how an investor is going to react when a proposal is about to, when a proposal is in front of him, and how he is going to take decision. This is already we have discussed in previous levels, that investor has different preferences. Some investors, they are risk avoiders, they don't prefer to take risk, they invest where they feel they are secured. Some people, they are mix of, they are a bit risk seekers, but on the back end they want to invest in a place where they feel it's more secured. And the reverse of this is the risk seekers. They invite risk, they like risk, and they are high seekers, high return people. So there are three attitudes which we have already discussed in the previous levels. Now in terms of traditional finance, we'll see how investor is going to make decisions. We will assume that the investor is we can assume that, as I explained you, the three different attitudes, but we can take the example of a risk averser who is going to avoid the risk and make unbiased utility maximizing decisions that a rational economic man would make. Now in terms of utility, this is the concept of the economic concept, which we already studied, that the importance in terms of importance, and he will always seek a personal utility maximizing decisions where he feels that he is getting the maximum MC and MR based on all available information. But there are certain exemptions to this rule, like personal utility derived from helping others and serving in military or serving as a religious capacity. These are beyond the normal expectations of an investor. In terms of the rational economic man, how they generally make decisions, confirming four axioms of utility, which is like completeness, transitivity, independence, and the continuity. When you are going to invest as a rational person, of course, you should have complete information. So when you have choice and preferences are known to you, it's very easy, logical to make decisions for you. And between any decisions, you have to see the individual preferences or over the other, or is indifferent between them. This concept is related to indifference curves, and we match it with the budget lines. This is already we have discussed in the economics portions, and generally we discuss this when it comes to a rational decision between an available budget and investment options. Transitivity is ranking are applied consistently. If the investor prefer choice X, so to choice Y, like in comparative sets, prefer Y to choose Z, the investor will prefer choice X to choice Z. I mean, this is one example. If you want to do a hotel, you want to make a school, and you want to make a community center, so your choice is persistence in terms of your transitivity. Independence is one of the most important factors, that utilities are addictive and divisible. If the investor prefer X to Y, adding any proportion of Z, the investor will prefer maybe X plus PZ or Y plus PZ. This is the rational combination can be developed. Continuity in terms of indifference curves are smooth and unbroken. They are showing a curve and showing different level of combinations. So there could be three choices. We can choose maybe like if we say one curve is L, M and M, and investor prefer to L to M and M to M. There could be like a combination of L and M. This is depend upon the rational decision, proportions, and and it can be proportional B. That makes the investor indifferent between AL plus BN and M. These are different combinations which a rational investor can do. This is purely linked with the concept of probability, and in probability is we see the chance of occurrence, where we take two examples, like one variable A, one variable is B. So in terms of probability, one event occurring given the event B has occurred, conditional probability of A, then its opposite, like conditional probability of B, is probability of event B occurring given that event A has occurred. It's a conditional event for B. And unconditional probability, which are not dependent on any other, we call as PB, and same for PA. So the conditional probability of A is equal to conditional probability of B, conditional probability of B into independent like PA and into PB. This is how this relation will be used for making a prudent decision. This is a Bayes formula, and it will be frequently used in our discussion. In terms of behavioral finance, assume investor employ a combination of traditional finance and psychological biases while making investment decisions. If you are an agriculturist and you want to invest, of course you are going to invest from your agriculture point of view. If you are a software developer, you are Bill Gates, or you are Steve, or you are McDonald's, in your different backgrounds you will put your different preferences while you are going to go for a investment. This is evident from the human behavior. Behavioral finance attempt to explain that why they make the decision they make. What is the reason? What is the behavior behind the financial mechanism of a particular investor? We can have two type of general categories in this scenario. One is the micro and other is macro. Micro behavioral finance is concerned about individuals, and macro, as in economics we already discussed that this is a bigger picture. So why market deviate from what we would term efficient in traditional finance. This is in different levels. We have discussed before that the market we have different forms. We have strong form, efficient markets, we have semi, and we have weak. If something is going out and a stock exchange or market is going to affect immediately, there's a direct connection. It is considered to be an efficient market. There are lower stage of this, and sometimes in certain markets world is in fire and there is nothing happening in stock exchange. They are going in the same way, there is no connectivity. So these things really matters when it comes to decision making in terms of macro finance. As we discussed before, that there are three risk behaviors for a particular investor. We can be a risk avoider, we are more rational, we can say we are very rational, keen, objective in terms of our investments. And if you are a risk averse, you will always seek to maximize expected return for a given level of risk. And neutral, if you're neutral, you would be indifferent, like based on your budget you can go to the other two alternatives. And the risk seeking would actually derive more utility from the riskier alternatives. So you will go and invest in that industry which is more riskier, because this is, we know, the higher the risk, higher the return. That's why when it comes to risk averse, your curve is moving towards the outer direction, and it will same way go up, and one time it will become on the stable. The other is opposite. Risk seeker is your curve is inwards to the y-axis, and you are moving up the shape. And in terms of neutral, you are in center, like you have equal distance from the both axes in the same capacity. Let's talk about prospect theory. What is that theory? How it works? Investors analyze risk relative to gains and losses. So we have to be more concerned with the change in wealth, that in comparison with the result level of the wealth. We can place a greater value on loss than on a gain of the same amount, and in terms of loss aversion, we can exhibit this. We can have risk seeking in an attempt to avoid losses. Sometimes, this is like a common, the risk seeker will try to attempt to avoid the losses. Investor make decision in two phases. One is the editing phase, the other is the evaluation phase. In editing phase, investor clarify their choices based on facts, information, utilizing typically according to the prospect theory 6 steps. One is codification, one is combination, one is segregation, cancellation, simplification, and detection of dominance. In cancellation, what you are going to do is you are going to cancel the choices. Like for example, you have 10 choices, so you are going to cancel 1, 2, 3, 4, and according to your own ideology. Simplification is, of course, you are going to, investor will tend not to think in precise probabilities because it's the early stage, and you will see which dominated choices can be eliminated. And as a rational investor, you are going to codify, you will identify and codify investment outcomes as a gain and losses, and assign a probability to each. You will see that the probability is higher, lower. You can make a distribution maybe in quantitative terms. To determine whether an outcome is gain or loss, the investor must select some reference points. Now, in terms of combination, to gain a better understanding of possible outcomes, the investor combines those with identical values. So, sometimes we say that we are comparing apple with apple. We cannot compare an apple with mangoes, because both has different trends, probability, and different way of cultivation and expected risk and returns. So investor should have a better understanding of the possible outcomes. The investor combines with their identical values in general. Segregation is really important. Investors segregate the certain and uncertain component of a gamble. So assuming payoff 50-50 and 150, a payoff 50 is certain. So we can say, okay, 50% is coming to us. This is a normal behavior. Cancellation can lead, there is a practical point, like cancellation can lead to the isolation effects. Investor focus on one factor or outcome while consciously eliminating or subconsciously ignoring others. So it's like, you're planning to marry and you have a couple of options. So you are thinking about one option, one parameters, and you are going to forfeit other options which might be good. So it is like a rational human behavior. Also, like investment, when it comes to investment, is the same thing, that an investor is going to focus while consciously eliminating or subconsciously saying yes, no, yes, no. Tendency to focus on high value is really temptative in the nature of human beings, and low probability events will also be noticed. We can ignore low volume, high probability events in the editing phase. Investor place values, of course, on alternative in terms of expected utility. So it's very rational. This is in different levels. In quantitative, we have studied that we can have a table who can give an alternative probability assigned to different outcomes in terms of expected value, and we can relate to it with standard deviation. Same way, like utility alternative, which we should take a probability of x and ux, py, uy plus zy, z, both we can compare. And what is the p1, that is probability of outcome, x and y are multiplied by x expected utility. This is how we can see in the evaluation phase. We have subjective probability, and we have judgmental probabilities. We have different kind of probabilities actually, which a rational investor can use. So similar to isolation effect, individuals tend to underweight high probability events and overweight low probability events. This is a natural behavior. So in that case, you will assign a WW is for subjective investor specification weightage. So weightage PU, this will be multiplied for X, Y, and Z. And investor subjective probability that event X, Y, and Z can occur. This is how we see in relations. We have bounded rationalities. Individual acts as rational as possible. This is generically we say we are fair, we are rational, we have no biases. But of course, there are always limitations. Maybe they don't have all aspect of a particular information which can impact their decision-making process. They lack the processing powers, like cognitive abilities, like they don't have sometimes vision, leadership abilities to rationalize in a way as it is required to interpret and place a value on information. Rather than optimize, individuals satisfy. This is another fact. So gather an adequate amount of information and apply heuristics to analyze, shape the information into an acceptable decision. This is a rational way to do. In terms of efficient market, the first question that we can ask from us is the price is right, the price that we are going to consider for our potential investments. If the market is efficient, the price instantly accurately reflects all information. So the same concept that we have discussed, the efficient market portfolios, we have semi-efficient, we have weak form of markets. So it will reflect the price genuineness, and it will create a credibility for the market. Investor can base potential allocation on prices only. No free lunch. If the market is efficient, price instantly and accurately reflect all information. Information enters randomly, so price changes randomly. Managers cannot consistently earn excessive returns. This is a fact in terms of your efficiency of the market.